Join me as we learn Chumash for the fifth Torah reading for Thursday of Parshas Naso. We now continue to learn about the offerings that the leaders of each tribe brought at the dedication of the tabernacle. This is now on the 1st of Nisan, 2449, 1 year after the Jewish people have left the land of Egypt, after the giving of the Torah, after Moses came down with the second set of tablets, which was Yom Kippur earlier this year. They told them to build the tabernacle. Now they finally built it. It sat for a while until the 1st of Nisan was the day that 7 days earlier it was erected and trained Aaron and his sons. And today on the 1st of Nisan is when Aaron and his sons take charge and when the leaders of all the tribes come to dedicate it with the sacrifices that they bring. We will notice as we go on to study the different sacrifices that all the tribe leader brought, that they're very similar. In fact, they're exactly the same. But the Torah repeats every single one of the tribes. Instead of saying this was what each one tribe brought, and just say what they brought, instead it repeats it again, as we're going to find in today's Torah reading and tomorrow's Torah reading. And as Chassidus explains, that is because every tribe had a specific energy when they brought those gifts and dedications. Although it may look the same on the outside, the spiritual energy that was behind it was different, and for that reason the Torah repeats each one as well. Chapter 7, verse 1. And this took place on the day that Moshe finished erecting the tabernacle. And he anointed it, and he sanctified it, and all the vessels that were in it, and the altar, and all the vessels that were together with the altar, he anointed them, and he sanctified them. Rashi, the word kalas, which means, if without a vav, you can read it kalas as well, which means from the word kala, like a bride. Because the day that the Mishkan was erected, the day that the tabernacle was made, was like a bride who goes into her chuppah, because the Jewish people are considered the bride of God, and thereby by them putting up the tabernacle, that was the chuppah, the wedding canopy, and when God's divine presence comes down and welcomes the Jewish people, that's the Jewish people entering the wedding canopy with God. Kalois Moshe, and that's why it has the word kalois without a vav, which one can read as well. The word kalois can be written without a vav. It is pronounced with a vav. However, it's written in the Torah with a vav. Kalois Moshe. Just interesting to note, though Rashi says it was written without a vav, this is according to the tradition that Rashi had in some of the books, or in some of the ways it was written in the name of the Medrash. However, our Torah scrolls, in our tradition, it has a vav. Kalis Moshe, what did Moshe complete? Who's the one that actually completed it? Seemingly the one that completed it was Betzalel and Eliyav. They were the ones that made it. Betzalel v'Eliyav v'chol chacham levasus hamishkan. Betzalel and Eliyav and all these intelligent and crafted craftsmen and skilled craftsmen, they are the ones that made the Mishkan. However, the verse gives the credit to Moshe. Because Moshe dedicated his life towards it. To make sure that everything was made exactly and particularly and specific to the commandment the way God showed him on the mountain. And thereby he taught the people how to do it. And they did not make a mistake even with one of the images. And so too, therefore, he was given the credit. So too we find so too we find the same ideas mentioned by King David. Because he gave his life and dedicated his life to the building of the Holy Temple. As it says, we're in the Tehillim, Psalm 132, where David says, I would give my whole life. I didn't sleep because I wanted to continue to make sure that the house of God is built. That's why we find that the Holy Temple, though Solomon was the actual one that built it, but it's also called in David's name, look, as it says in the book of Kings, look at the house of David, because he dedicated his life towards it. when Moshe concluded to erect. It doesn't say when he erected. What does it mean when he concluded to erect? Why? Let him just say that when he erected. Because it teaches us that throughout the 7 days of training for Aaron and his sons, they would take down the tabernacle and put it back up. But that day, on the 8th day, which was the day that they dedicated the actual tabernacle, they put it up, but they didn't take it down. Therefore it says, therefore it says on the day that they concluded putting it up, meaning that they no longer took it down like in the previous days. What day was this? This was on the 1st of Nisan. Basheni, because on the next day, Nisrafa Apara, was when they, immediately the next day is when they burnt the red heifer, so they should have the ash of the red heifer. Because then on the 3rd day was when they actually sprinkled the Levites with the blood of the red heifer, as we're going to see later on in chapter 8, when we talk about in the Torah reading about Loscha, when they dedicated the Levites towards the work of the Holy Temple. Bashvi, and it was on the 7th day from Rosh Chodesh Nisan that Gilchu, that they shaved all their hair. As we read about this, how the Levites had to dedicate themselves, had to completely shave all their hair. Then they were waived, and they were dedicated to be the ones to work in the Holy Temple. Verse 2: Vayekrivu Nesiei Yisrael Roshei Beis Avisam. The princes of Israel, the heads of the fathers' houses, then presented they were the ones who were present during the counting when we spoke about previously, that Moshe had to have helpers in the last week's Torah reading in Parshas Bamidbar. God tells him to take the leaders of each tribe to help with the counting and the census. These were the same leaders that were now presenting the sacrifices for the dedication of the tabernacle. Heim Nesiei Amatis, Rashi, Shahayu Sheitrim Aleim b'Mitzrayim. They were also appointed in Egypt to make sure that they were the ones that they would lead, that they would tell the Jewish people in Egypt, meaning that they were responsible for the work that they were doing. And these individuals, these leaders, were beaten by Pharaoh's henchmen because they were not making the Jewish people do the quota that was needed, meaning that these leaders were in charge of the Jewish people to make sure they follow the quota. Because they didn't oppress the Jewish people and make them follow the quota, they were the ones that were beaten by Pharaoh's henchmen because the Jewish people were not concluding their quota. They were the ones that stood with Moshe and Aaron, counted the Jewish people when they did the census, as we learned previously in the last week's Torah reading, that Moshe and Aaron should have with them people who count. What did they bring? Verse 3, and they brought their sacrifices before God, 6 eglis tov, 6 covered wagons, u'shneim asar bakar agola al shnei anisim, and 12 oxen, and a wagon for each 2 of the princes. V'sher le'echad, and an ox for each one. Vayekrivu oisam lefnei hamishkan, and they presented them in front of the tabernacle. Rashi, sheish eglis tzav. What does the word tzav mean here? Ela mechupim. They were coated, meaning that they brought these wagons. They were covered. What was it covered with? So Rashi explains that we find this word tzavim also means covered. Uba tzavim uba prodim. When it talks about the different wagons and the horses and the chariots that came, it says, and they were covered, and the mules. Shagolis mechuseis kruseis tzavim. Any wagon that has a covering on top of it is called tzavim. Vayakrivu oisam lefnei hamishkan. They brought them before the Mishkan. Shleikibel Moshe miyadam asher nemer le mipia gvura. That Moshe first did not accept these sacrifices from them until God told him that he can take them. Omer Rabbi Nasan. Rabbi Nasan says, why all of a sudden over here did the princes come along, did the leaders come along, and they decide to bring sacrifices for the dedication of the tabernacle? But this is what the Nesiim said, the leader said, but when it came to the building of the tabernacle, they only were Johnny-come-latelys, they only came later on, and they realized there was almost nothing left for them to bring. This is what the leaders said when it came to the building of the tabernacle. When it came to the building of the tabernacle, they said, let the community, let everybody bring what they have to bring. And whatever they're going to miss out will already fill in the void. Even but once they saw that everybody brought so much to the extent that they told him, as it says in the verse, that it says the work was more than enough. Amru, they said, we don't have anything to bring. What are we going to do? So therefore, they brought the stones, the precious gemstones that according to the Medrash actually fell in their mana, and they brought it to the Holy Temple. That was going to be their donation. Therefore, when it came in this case, once the actual tabernacle was built, they said, we don't want to miss out again. Therefore, the moment the tabernacle was brought, they stepped up to the plate and they said, we want to be the first ones to bring the sacrifices and donate towards the building of the dedication of the tabernacle. Verse 4. And God said to Moshe, Kach me'itam. As we mentioned previously, Moshe didn't take it until God told him he's allowed to. And verse 5, we see that God tells him, Kach me'itam, take it from them. And let them be used for the service of the tent of meeting. And you'll give them to the Levites, each man according to his work. Verse 6, so Moshe took the wagons and the cattle, and he gave them to the Levites. Verse 7, he gave the 4 wagons and he gave the 2 wagons and the 4 oxen. Naso livnei Gershon, he gave to the family of Gershon, kefi avidasam, according to their work. Rashi, kefi avidasam, shehaya masa b'nei Gershon kal mishal merari, because the load that the people of Gershon, the family of Gershon, was lighter, was not as difficult as the one of the family of Merari. Because the family of Merari would have to carry the beams, the planks, the pillars, the sockets. There was a lot more for them to carry. So therefore, they, as we're going to see, they got more. That's why the Torah says according to their work, based on what they needed, based on what their difficulty and what their ability and work that they had to do, their load that they had to carry, that was the amount of wagons that they got. Verse 8, that's why they got only 2 wagons, the family of Gershon. However, the family of Merari, they got 4 wagons and 8 oxen, twice as much as the Gershon family. Nasan livnei Merari gave to the Merari family, kefi avidasam, according to their work, biyad Yisamar ben Aaron HaKohen, in the hands of Yisamar, the son of Aaron the Kohen. As it's explained in many places, and as the Rebbe explains the concept that over here we seemingly find that there was a limited amount, that every leader just gave a half a wagon, and that was because of teaching us that there was no extras and there was no waste, and everything that had to be placed in the Holy Temple was for a purpose, and even the wagons that were carrying the beams, and even though it seemed like they were being so cheap about it, that was because every single item had to be used for a specific and designated purpose. Verse 9. However, to the family of Kahas, they did not get any wagons or oxen, because they had the holy work, the holy objects they had to carry, and therefore was incumbent upon them to carry it on their shoulders and not on any wagon. Rashi, they were carrying the holy vessels, which were included ha'oren, the ark, a shulchan, the table, therefore they didn't need any wagons that they would carry it with. These holy items would be carried by hand and on their shoulder. Verse 9, verse 10, and the leaders, after they presented their personal offerings, then the leaders brought the dedications to the altar, on the day that it was anointed, and the leaders then presented their offerings in front of the altar. Rashi, after they already gave their wagons and oxen which they were going to be used to carry the tabernacle, then they decided that we're also going to donate special sacrifices to dedicate the actual altar itself. Again, we find over here that they brought it before the altar, and it was only until that Moshe was told by God, until God told him that he should accept it from them, did he take it. As we see in verse 11, God tells him now he can take it. God says to Moshe, a prince every single day, a leader every day, every leader every day, will be the ones to bring their sacrifices for the dedication of the altar. Moshe still, even though that he told them that they can bring the sacrifices, but Moshe still didn't know how and when they're going to bring it. Should it go according to the way they were born, that Reuven first and then Shimon, then Levi, or is it going to go according to the how they are camped, which would be Yehuda, Yisachar, Zvulun, and so on. Until God came and told them that the order and the system should be according to each one how they are encamped. That's the way and the system and the order of how they should be bringing the sacrifices. Verse 12, now we go into what those sacrifices were actually. Verse 12, and the leaders that brought the sacrifice on the first day, as Carbonate that brought the sacrifice, Nachshon ben Aminadav, was Nachshon the son of Aminadav, Lamata Yehuda, to the tribe of Yehuda. By Yom Rishon, what does it mean on that day? Oisei Hayom, that special day, Notel Zera Esra Toris, they were taken, or they were given on the 10 special qualities. Rishon L'maisa Bereshis, it was that special day, the first of Nisan. There were 10 first. There were 10 very special things that happened. Number one, it was the first day of creation, because on Sunday is the first day of creation. Rishon L'Nesim, it was the first day that the leaders, the princes, were able to bring a sacrifice. And all of them are mentioned in the Seder Olam, where it tells us about all the 10 special qualities that were given on that day, which is, first of all, just to mention a few, it was the first day that God's divine presence was amongst the Jewish people. It was the first time that the Jewish people were not allowed to bring sacrifices on private altars, the first day that the Kohanim actually worked in the service of the Kohen, the first time that they blessed the Jewish people as the Kohanim. It was the first time that they actually brought the constant offerings, which was the offering in the morning and the offering in the evening, as well as the first time that they ate from the special holy offerings that had to be eaten in a special place within the boundaries of the Mishkan, because until now it was able to be eaten in all places. And it was the first time that the fire from heaven came down. So over here the Torah tells us as well, by Yom Rishon, what does it mean that day? That day was a special day, that it was blessed. That Sunday was given 10 special crowns, that the world was blessed with 10 special blessings on the day of Sunday. Lamata Yehuda, to the tribe of Yehuda, the Torah tells us to which tribe he was from, meaning the Torah tells us just which tribe he was from, but not that he took the sacrifice from the people of his tribe, meaning Talmud Leimer Zekar Banachshim Shalahevi. When one looks at the words of the verse, one can think 1 second, who's the one that actually gave the sacrifice? Did he go and collect money from everybody in his tribe? And that's why the Torah tells me he came from the tribe of Yehuda? Or was this his personal sacrifice? If you recall previously, we spoke about that the leaders in this case wanted to show their dedication, and because of that, they personally gave these presents to the Holy Temple. So therefore, the Torah says, which tribe was he from? Shevet Yehuda. But Zeh, Korban, Nachshon, ben Aminadav, as we're going to conclude, that this is the sacrifice of Nachshon, the son of Aminadav, that this was his personal dedication, not that he got it and he collected money from people in his tribe. Now the Torah is going to tell us the detail of the sacrifice. Verse 13, Korbanai, what was his sacrifice? Karas kesef achas. It was an offering that was 1 silver bowl weighing 130 achas shleishim mishkala, was weighing 130 shekel. Mizrak echad kesef. It was a 1 silver sprinkling basin. Shivim shekel b'shekel hakedesh. It weighed 70 shekel according to the sacred shekel. Shnei aleim and selis v'lula b'shem mincha. They were both filled with fine flour mixed with olive oil, and for a voluntary grain offering. Rashi Shnei aleim selis. Leminchas Nadava, because this was a donation offering of a meal offering that he was giving. 14. Kaf achas asar zav malei keteris, 1 gold spoon of 10 shekel filled with incense. Asar zahav, Rashi Kedagume, like the Targum explains, Mishkel Eser Shikli HaKodesh HaYibah was weighed 10 silver coins of the holy coins that was in it. Malei keteris, filled with incense. Generally, we don't find that a person was able to dedicate and bring a sacrifice of incense, or in general that a person should even bring incense on the outside or altar. This was something unique, special for the dedication of the altar. Verse 15, Par Echad, there was a young bull, Ben Bakar, the choicest ram of his flock, Par Echad Ben Bakar, a young bull in his herd, Ayil Echad, a ram, Keves Echad, one sheep, Ben Shnasei Li'olah, they were in its first year, was used for an ascent offering. Par Echad Menyuchat Shebedri was the one that was distinguished, it was unique, the choicest of the one that was in its herd. Verse 16, Se'in Izem Echad Achatas, one young goat offering for a sin offering. L'chaped al kever tahim l'tuma safek. This was to be able to atone if there was a doubt, if any impurity may have been in a place where they don't know, that means underneath the ground. Therefore, this is a purity in doubt. Therefore, they brought this type of sin offering just in case they touched something which was impure and they did not know about it, and therefore they're asking for an atonement for it. Verse 17, Ulezevach hashlamim bakar shnayim, and for the peace offering they brought 2 oxen, Eilim chamisha, 5 rams, Atudim chamisha, 5 he-goats, Kvosim b'nei shana, 5 lambs that were a year old, chamisha, 5 of them, Zekar ben Nachshon ben Aminadav. This is the sacrifice that Nachshon ben Aminadav, Nachshon the son of Aminadav, brought. There are some that want to explain that if you look at the different things that they were brought here, have also a historic significance into the amount that they brought and what it was. So, for example, the silver bowl was alluded to Adam, that the numerical value of Adam's words, or the numerical value of the word silver bowl is 930 to the years that Adam lived. So too the silver basin is alluded to Noah, because the one silver basin alludes to 520, and 500 alludes to the age that Noah began to have children. 20 alludes to the 20 years of the decree concerning the flood that started before his time, before the time of when he had children. The weight of the basin, you have 70 shekel, alludes to the 70 nations of the world. The spoon alludes to the Torah, because, as the God says, the word kaf, that he gave it, that the word spoon is the same word as hand, that God gave us the Torah. The weight of the ladle was 10 shekel for the 10 commandments. The incense was 613 for the 613 commandments. If you take 613, when the dalet is substituted for a kuf, there's atbash, that the first letter aleph corresponds to taf and base to shin, so you'll get the number 613. The young bull, as that we find by Abraham, brought a young bull that he gave the angels, and he took it as an offering. The ram for Isaac, the lamb that Jacob brought, the lamb that Jacob had to watch amongst his fathers, as well as you talk about the 20 years of decree of the destruction of and then you have the 70 nations, and all the different things that are mentioned over here, that each one of those are just some of the things that you find, that's why they give these measurements and these amounts. We're alluding to greater and deeper details that are hinted within them. The Torah now is going to continue with the rest of the tribes and the leaders of the tribes, what they gave. Some of them have Rashis, and some of them, as we're going to see, Rashi talks about the things that we just mentioned in the different ones of the different tribes of what they gave, as we'll see in the following Rashis that we just mentioned in short. Verse 18, on the second day, the Nesanel ben Tzuar, the son of Tzuar, the leader of the tribe of Yisachar, brought his sacrifices. He brought his sacrifice, which comprised of a silver bowl weighing 130 shekel, Mizrak echad kesef shivim shekel, one silver Mizrak echad kesef shivim shekel, Mizrak echad kesef shivim shekel, one silver sprinkled basin of 70 shekel, b'shekel hakodesh weighing of the holy shekel, shnei aleim selas, both filled with flour mixed with olive oil, melula b'shem mincha mixed with oil for a grain offering. Rashi, Hikriv Nisanel ben Tzuar, Hikriv es karbanai. So Rashi over here explains, and as we mentioned previously, some of these things that what they're alluding to. Ma Talmud Loimer Hikriv b'shifte shel Yisrach Marshal Namer b'chol hashvatim. Why does it say Hikriv, the word that he brought, but that he brought close, but it doesn't mention it by all the other tribes. By all the other tribes, it just says what their sacrifice was. Why by by this case, by Yisachar, does he say he brought it? Because Reuven came along and complained, and he said, I am first. It's enough that Yehuda went before me. At least I should be the one to be the next. You want to say Yehuda because he's the leader, he's the one in the front, okay. But at least me, I'm the oldest one of the tribes. I should be able to bring the sacrifices. Moshe told him, this is what God said. And that God said they should bring the sacrifices according to the way they're camped. Therefore it says, that he brought his sacrifice. And it's missing a yud, which means meaning that he was told, come close, it's your turn now. Because he was told by God that his turn is the one to bring it now. What did he bring? Why does it say twice that he brought it? Because it says in verse 18 that he brought it, and then it says it again in verse 19 that he brought his sacrifice. Why does it have to say it two times? Because the two things the tribe of Yisachar merited that he should be the number two to bring his sacrifices. Number one, number one is that they were knowledgeable in the study of Torah. As it says in that it was from, as it says in the book of Chronicles, that it was from the tribe of Yisachar that they were the ones that knew the exact times of when they would set the exact times of when things were, and they were very fluent in the study of Torah. They were the ones that set when the leap year would be. They were the ones that set when the new month would begin. And the second reason is because whose idea was it that the leaders should even give these sacrifices was from the tribe of Yisachar, and therefore they merited that they should bring it the second. I found this interpretation in the law in the book of Ramosha Darshan. Then Nisanel ben Tzur was the one that came up with this idea that they should be the ones to give the sacrifices. Verse 19, we also learned about Karas Kesef, Minyan Oisius, and over here, as we mentioned previously before, the letters Oisius, the numeric value of the word Karas Kesef, Kuf being 100, Ayin 70, Reish 200, Taf 40, Kaf 20, Samach 60, Pei 80. Gematria will give you the numerical value of 900, Taf Kuf Lamed 930, Keneged Shneisov Shel Adam Marishan, for the years that Adam Marishan Adam lived. Shleishim Ameya Mishkala, 130 was its weight. Al-Shem Keshahemid told us Likim Olam ben Kuf Lamed Shana Hayed. The reason why 130, because when Adam first had children, when he gave birth to Shes, that was Seth, that was only when he was 130 years old. As we see that in the book of Genesis, it says Adam was 130 years old, and he gave birth to Shes. Mizrak Echad Kesef. The word Mizrak Echad is the same numeric value as Taf Kuf Chaf, it's 520. Al Shem Noach Shehemi told us Ben Taf Kuf Shana, because Noach gave birth to children when he was 500 years old. What's the 20 then? Al Shem Esrim Shana Shnig Zigzedus Amabel Kedem Tal Yisaf. And this was because 20 years before he had his children was when the decree of the flood would happen. And the same way, look back to Rashi's explanation, where there in the book of Genesis, where he talks about why man would live 120 years, is to hint on this concept, to hint and to allude to this idea. Therefore it says one basin was of silver, and it doesn't say one silver basin, like it says by the trays. To tell us, and also the word echad, Aleph, Ches, Daled is part of the numeric value when I'm looking at this calculation, because if I would have put it at the end, I wouldn't know it's part of the calculation. So therefore it says Mizrak Echad Kesef to tell me that all three words are part of this calculation. Shivim shekel, why 70 shekel? Keneged Shivim Umishiyatzim Ebanav, because the 70 nations that are in the world. Verse 20, Kaf Achas Asar Azav Malay Ketedus, one gold spoon weighing 10 shekel with incense. Kaf Achas, Keneged Atera, this Kaf Achas refers to the Torah, which was given from the hand of God. As we mentioned previously, the word kaf can mean spoon, and also palm, that it came from God. Malaya Keteris, Gematria Shel Keteris, the numeric value of the word Keteris is Tar Yag 613. Umulvad, the only way you're going to get 613, you might do the numeric value, say we're off by a little bit. So as you'll see, regularly it's 500, it's going to be 600. to Kuf is 100, Tes is 9, Reish is 200, Taf is 400, so you'll have there 709. Where do you get the number from? Is because you have to change the Kuf Bidalid, al Yudei At Bash Gyar Dak. When you do, as we mentioned previously, that the letters of the Aleph base can also be done called At Bash. You exchange the Aleph for a Taf, the Beis for a Shin, the Gimel for a Reish, the Dalit for a Kuf. So if you can exchange the Aleph for a Kuf, so then you have Ketores, Kuf is really 4. Tes is 9, 4 plus 9 gives you 13. Then you have the Reish and the Taf, which is another 600, so you have 613. Verse 21. Par Echad ben Bakar, one bull, one young bull, Ayel Echad, one ram, Keves Echad, one sheep, and Shnasi La'ila, when a year old, it would be used for an ascent offering. Rashi, Par Echad, Keneged Avram, because Avram, where it says that he took and he went to get one young bull when he was serving the three angels. Ayel Echad, the ram, Vayikach Ayel, because he took the ram instead of Isaac on the binding of Isaac. Keves Echad, Keneged Yaakov, Eksavim Gifred Yaakov, because the sheep that Yaakov took care of Lavan, that he took care of by Lavan. Verse 22. One young goat, he goat first in offering. If this was to atone for the sin of the sale of Yosef, that it says by there that they used the goat to be able to mix the garment in, and this way they sent the garment that Yosef wore. It's to Yaakov to identify that this was Yosef's garment. And for a peace offering they used 2 cattle, two oxen, Elim Chamisha 5 rams, Atudim Chamisha 5 he-goats, Kvasim and Eshana Chamisha 5 lambs in their first year. Zeh Karban Nisan al Ben Tzur, this is the offering of Nisan al Ben Tzur. Rashi L'Zevach Hashem Bakar Shnayim, what was the 2 rams for the peace offering? This was for Moshe and Aaron, that they were the ones that brought peace amongst the Jewish people, together with peace between the Jews and God. Elam Atudim Kvasim. If you look at the rams, the he-goats, and the 5 lambs, these are for the 3 different kinds that exist, meaning the 3 different types, Keneget Kenim Levim Israelim, the Kohanim, the Levites, the Israelites, Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim, the Tanakh, which is made up of Torah, prophets, and scriptures, Shalish Chamishiyes. There's also, then you have, they were both, all of 3 kinds were 5 of each. Why 5? Because there's 3 5s. 1, Keneget Chamisha Chomshin, you have the 5 books of Moses. Achas Keneget Chamisha Dibrish Agluch Echad Chamisha Ksuvim Aloch Hasheni. Another one is because you have the 5 for 5 commandments written on each one of the tablets. And then you have, and then Ad Kan Misedish Ramesha Hadarshan. All this is explained based on the teachings of Ramesha Hadarshan. Verse 24. And on the 3rd day, the leader of the tribe of Zevulun who brought the sacrifices was Eliav ben Chelin. Rashi, on the 3rd day, the one that brought the sacrifices was the leader of the tribe of Zvulun. And so too, this is the language is going to be used from now on by the rest of the tribes. Avul ben Nisanel. However, by the previous one, who was the tribe of Yisachar, Nisanel, the son of Tzuar, Shnemer by Hikriv Nisanel, it says Nisanel brought. Over there it says his name afterwards, because it's going back into telling us who this individual, because it already mentioned his name and what he brought. Therefore it says that he was the leader of, and therefore he brought it. Bishar ben Hikriv, by the other ones, where he doesn't say the word Hikriv, therefore he uses the terminology, he is the leader of so-and-so tribe. Meaning, meaning that day, who was the one that brought the sacrificers was the leader of that so-and-so tribe. We're going to go through now the next few tribes, as there are no Rashis, as each one were explained previously, and as we mentioned, each one of the tribes in this Torah reading and the next Torah reading as well. Karbanai, verse 25. Karbanai kares kesef achas shleishim ameim mishkalim mitzvah kechad kesef shivim shekel b'kedesh shneim aleim selis mula v'shem mincha. His offering was 1 silver bowl weighing 130 shekel, 1 silver sprinkling weighing 70 shekel, to the value of the sacred shekel. Both were filled with fine flour mixed with oil for a grain offering. Kaf achas asar zav b'nei keteres, 1 gold spoon weighing 10 shekel filled with incense. They had a choice of the best young bull of his herd, the best ram in his flock, and the lamb in its first year for an ascent offering. A goat, one young goat for a sin offering. And for the peace offering, there was 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 he-goats, 5 lambs in their first year. This was the offering of Eliyav ben Chelin. Verse 30. By Yom HaRevi'ah, on the 4th day, Naso Livdei Reuven, the leader of Reuven, and Lisor ben Shteir. Karbanei kares kesef achas leisha b'meir shmigol mizgachat kesef shivim shekel b'shekel hakedesh ne'malei mitzvah mulvin shamal mincha. His offering was 1 silver bowl weighing 30 shekel, 1 silver sprinkling basing of 70 shekel. In what kind of shekel was a sacred shekel? Both were filled with fine flour, mixed with olive oil for a grain offering. Kafach hasasadas of malei kateris, 1 gold spoon weighing 10 shekel, filled with incense. There was one young bull, the best of its herd, one ram, the best of its flock, and 1 lamb in its first year for an ascent offering. 1 young goat for a sin offering. Verse 35. And for the peace offering, 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 he-goats, 5 lambs in the first year, and this was the offering of Elitzur, the son of Shteir. Verse 36, we're now on the 5th day. Shimon was the leader of the tribe of Shimon. His name was Shlumiel ben Tzuri Shadai. For 37, his offering was Karbanai. His offering was Kares Kesef Achat Shleishim B'Meya Mishkala Mizrak Echad Kesef Shivim Shekel B'Shekel HaKedash Shneihem B'Leim Selis Melulav Hashem Mincha. So 1 silver bowl weighing 130 shekel, 1 silver sprinkling basin weighing 70 shekel in the holy shekel, both filled with fine flour mixed with oil for an ascent offering. It was 1 spoonful of weighing 10 shekel of incense for a donation offering as well. 1 bull, best of its kind, 1 ram, best of its flock, 1 lamb that was a year old, la'ila for an ascent offering. 40, 1 young goat for a sin offering, and for the peace offering, there were 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 he-goats, 5 lambs in their first year, and this was the offering of Shlumiel, the son of Tzuri Shadai. This concludes the 5th Torah reading of Parshas Naso.